Deportation flights from the remote Florida Everglades Immigration Detention Center, known as Alligator Alcatraz, are now underway. The controversial facility has been open since the beginning of the month and now holds up to 2,000 undocumented immigrants and has its own airstrip for deportation flights. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says hundreds of detainees have now been flown from there to other countries.
I'm pleased to report that those flights out of Alligator Alcatraz by DHS have begun. The cadence is increasing. We've already had a number of flights in the last few days. We've had hundreds of illegals have been removed from here.
Critics say the facility is cruel and inhumane. However, DeSantis and other Republican officials defending it. They say it's part of Florida's aggressive push to support President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. Okay, meantime, a measure to help disperse homeless shelters and services across San Francisco passed a crucial vote. The Board of Supervisors Budget and Finance Committee advancing the legislation that would prohibit new facilities in neighborhoods that already have a number of such sites. We want to go in depth tonight on this ordinance with Supervisor Bilal Mahmood, who authored the measure. Supervisor, really appreciate you joining me tonight. I talked with you back in May when you first introduced this idea. Now, originally you had called for 11 districts, all 11 districts in San Francisco, to approve at least one new shelter and bar new facilities from opening near existing ones. That's not what this legislation does. Why did you decide to make the changes?
Yeah, so the One City Shelter Act has had one principle in mind, which is how do we match supply to need and solve a citywide problem that for too long has taken a fragmented and reactive approach. And over the last several months since first introducing legislation, we ran an extremely collaborative process with labor groups, nonprofit advocacy groups, and business chamber groups as well, which have all endorsed the plan. And that helped us take an evidence and a data-based approach, which looks at this problem from a neighborhood basis rather than a district basis, and an evidence-based basis, which now says we look at every neighborhood and see how many shelters versus how many unsheltered, and say that those neighborhoods that have sufficient supply to meet their need no longer need as much prioritization of services. And importantly, with the budget we just talked about as well, the mayor's budget allocates about 2,000 to 3,000 beds over the next several years. So we reframe this proposal to be more about how to reallocate that budget that's already been directed to make sure it's going to the right neighborhoods that need those services most.
But Supervisor, you believe then that this still has the intent that you set out, which was to make sure and evenly distribute the services across San Francisco?
I think the thing to recognize is that for too long, certain neighborhoods, 8 neighborhoods in the city, predominantly in the center of the city, have about 75% of all shelter in San Francisco. And that has two problems that resulted because of that. One, nearly 1,000 people are unsheltered in over 30 neighborhoods across the city with no immediate access to care. That means that people's fathers, brothers, sisters, friends are dying on our streets because they cannot come indoors. And second, it has shouldered the burden of responsibility on those neighborhoods like the Tenderloin that I represent, which has 30% of all shelter in the city, but 18% of all unsheltered individuals. And as a result, the 3,000 children who live there, people of color, immigrants and refugees, don't have the type of services that they need in the neighborhood. There's not a single ice cream store, toy store, or wholesale grocery store in the Tenderloin. And so this will give the Tenderloin the revitalization it needs to have economic diversity.
That's a really important point that you make. So what can people in the Tenderloin and officials there really expect of this new ordinance if it is in fact approved by the full Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, this codifies trust into our city charter that we are no longer going to treat the Tenderloin the way we've been treating it for decades. And in turn gives them the sense of belief and trust that we're going to focus on other things like a toy store or an ice cream store or a wholesale grocery store, other types of business to serve the needs of the residents that already live there, because we have 30% of services and 18% of unsheltered individuals. We can serve the needs of the unsheltered individuals in our neighborhood already. It's time to also provide new services for the people who live here as well.
But just to be clear, this legislation does not prohibit a new shelter from opening up, let's say in the Tenderloin, it just encourages the mayor not to do so.
And it encourages the budget to be allocated to those neighborhoods that don't have enough supply. And if a shelter has to go into a neighborhood, it will require a vote from the Board of Supervisors to make sure the community is still involved and has a voice earlier in the process than it normally would.
Okay, so what's next for this? I mentioned that the Budget and Finance Committee advanced it. So when will it be considered by the full board?
It'll go to the full board on Tuesday for an initial vote.
Okay, and how are you feeling about the outcome of that vote?
Feeling good, and I think it's because we ran an extremely collaborative process that really focuses on data and evidence, the first of its kind framework in the state that we can find. We're using evidence and data to make decisions on a problem that has been treated so fragmented and decentralized and reactive for so long. And we've gotten endorsements from labor groups like Local 2, Local 5, Local 87, the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, Bay Area Council, and neighborhood groups that represent the Tenderloin and other neighborhoods around the city as well. So we ran an extremely collaborative process across these groups that don't often come together, but they agree on this piece of legislation.
Okay, well, we will see what happens next week. Supervisor Mahmoud, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.